This video has been made possible by Blizzard Entertainment, more on them a little bit later in the video, as well as that, of course, spoilers for Pokopia. You've been warned, and I'm going to talk about the lore in depth, but here's the answer to my theory at the very end, which is Deoxys. It's Deoxys. I figured it out, and I want to know while you're listening to the story and how the lore comes together, if you come to the same kind of conclusion. So put Deoxys in the back of your mind while we study the destruction of Pokopia, or rather, the entire Pokemon world. For Pokopia, the game is set in the Kanto region of a Pokemon world that is much like the ones we've played in Generation 1, or even in like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. This version of Kanto, whichever it is, whether it's one we've played or one we haven't, clearly followed a similar kind of timeline of events. There are notes, relics of a time gone by, these human records that tell us that Bede became the gym leader in the events of Sword and Shield, which did happen in the versions that we played, and that indeed the Alolan Pokemon League was created. Gladion is out there using type null, not Silvally, maybe suggesting a difference of events, or maybe suggesting that he got hold of a later type null that was created. Anyway, all of this is to say that it seems that the destruction of the Pokemon world happened sometime after the Pokemon timeline that we know. In fact, you can find outfits of many of the characters from the Kanto games, specifically from the Let's Go models, though also the Johto designs from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and these are probably different timelines or whatever you want. So just think of it as a generalized Pokemon timeline with Pokopia happening sometime after. And when we look to the outfit of Koga and Janine, and this is something I mentioned in my Who Professor Tangrowth's Trainer Was video, which I will leave linked below, you should check that out after this, we know that this outfit belonged to the gym leaders when they were the gym leaders in the distant past. And that's not Ditto's point of view on the matter, that is what the relic has to say about it. So the Kanto gym leaders, their time, that was considered the distant past as of the time this document was made back before the Great Apocalypse. So we know when this is set, and we know where. It is Kanto. Like, very clearly these areas are designed to be the Kanto region. It's the tiling of Fuchsia City as we see it in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And in this area, we find the Warden's teeth and Koga's outfit. But we also find notes talking about the Sevi Islands, which aren't actually in Let's Go, but are in Fire Red and Leaf Green, games that were re-released on the Switch 2 just a week before Pokopia came out. And it makes sense, because when we look to the roster of legendary Pokemon found in this region, there are the legendary birds, the legendary beasts, Mewtwo, Mew, Ho-Oh, and Lugia, and all of these can be found across the Kanto region and the Sevi Islands. Well, I guess technically apart from Mew, but it is clearly a Kantonian, kind of Pokemon. Oh, and there are actually two other legendary Pokemon. Volcanion, which I cannot believe for 2 new games in a row they brought in Volcanion and gave it no new lore. Like, even the Pokedex entry for Volcanion mentions how it doesn't go where humans tread, and it's like, no duh, there are no humans anymore. Just give it something new, Game Freak. And Kyogre, which got me thinking, like, where's Groudon? We'll get to that. We also get a mention in the human records about a number of key characters. Rocket Grunt, a programmer for an app, a hacker, the professor, the trainer of Ditto, and a mysterious foundation, just called the Foundation, who helped organize the escape of humanity into space. Now, this is very interesting, and you might already be thinking of a group, and I want to go there as well. But for those who don't know what I'm talking about just yet, let's take a look at the Alola region, because in the Alola region, there are ultra wormholes that lead into ultra space, one of which is the Ultra Ruin. This is the last time I'm saying Ultra, where you can find Guzzlord, and in this space, we learn that this, I've got to say it, Ultra Ruin is a dark parallel to the Alola region that we play in those games. Hau'oli City has been destroyed, Guzzlord is cleaning up, and all of the humans have been evacuated off-world. Where did they go? It's not quite clear. Maybe they left through an ultra wormhole, or maybe they left into deep space. Humans can exist on other worlds. We see that in Kartana's world as well. We also see it in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Oh, I had to say it again twice. In Ultra Megalopolis, where a group of humans are surviving their own Pokemon catastrophe. These cataclysms are common in the Pokemon world, and escaping into a space or into another world or another reality, it's always a good shout. So it makes sense that this is how the humans decided to react, how they decided to survive the great cataclysm. But what was the cataclysm, Toby, you're asking me? Could it have been the result of some Pokemon, or possibly as a result of today's sponsor, Blizzard Entertainment, with their new Hearthstone 3.5.0 Cataclysm expansion? That was an ultra segue. Hearthstone is free to play, and it's on mobile and PC. It is a digital card game that I actually played on release. I really enjoy Hearthstone. That was over a decade ago, and I had loads of fun shaking up the board with World world destroyers like Alexstrasza and Ragnaros, and a personal favorite of mine, the lovely fisherman Nat Pagel. Yeah, I have him in my collection in gold, and look, after a while of just chilling out and fishing and taking a break from the big battles, I kind of felt like my collection fell behind, and it just felt like too late to jump in. Well, Blizzard Entertainment has answered the call, making you an offer like never before, because now is the perfect time to get back into the game with the 3.5.0 expansion, Cataclysm, which is just, as the lore goes, beautiful, and it's totally resetting the board. The Dragon's Hoard of Rewards brings with it not one, but 2 expansions of extra cards for you to use, expansions 32 and 33, on a trial basis, as well as a brand new UI, cross-platform play, and a fast path into the world of deck building, and a refreshed meta. These free trial cards are only available for a limited time, so you won't want to miss out, and with a new rotation, there's just never been a better time to jump back into Hearthstone, because ultimately, no one's further ahead than anyone else. Now's your chance to rule the game with cards by your side like Deathwing the World Breaker. As I mentioned, it's available on PC and mobile, so click that link at the top of the description while you can get access to these free trial cards and get hold of Hearthstone today. Master a new world, new decks, and new strategies. And now let's shake up this video and work out who exactly was the Doombringer in Pokopia. So as I mentioned before, there are a few big players in the space, people we know a lot about, like the Professor, who mentions in his very first diary entry that there were weather disturbances, anomalies that were happening, and by later entries, we learn that these anomalies are becoming more dramatic, affecting Pokemon and people in bigger ways. I'm going to look at these big characters, but there are a bunch of smaller notes that indicate how people were thinking and feeling at the time of the world's destruction. There's a trainer school memo, for example, that just focuses on an urge to recycle. Not the most abnormal thing to find in a school, but maybe indicative of the time that people were having, focusing on the environment. Vermilion City, for example, is praised based on its livability, based on its nature, despite the fact that there's a lot of urban development happening. A weather report ominously mentions that there is no weather warning to be issued today about any volcanic eruptions, despite the current situation as we see it around the Pewter Museum. This is probably Mount Moon that's erupted. Sailor Dylan, who's actually an NPC in the Kanto games, mentions that the sea is particularly wavy and choppy for him, so much so it seems like he might throw up. The Pokemon memo, as I mentioned earlier, is responding to a steep rise in server fees as a result of the rising prices of energy, and in the Comfy Living magazines, there's a comment on how people seem to just be getting low sleep due to the changes in the environment. New Barktown in Johto is seeking new residents. Possibly this could be connected, people leaving areas as environments become degraded, and the price of vegetables has gone up in Viridian City. That's like the peripheral stuff. But when we look to our big characters, our Rocket Grunt, our Professor, the Hacker, the Pokélife app developer, and the Foundation, we really get a clear picture of what's been going on. The Professor has 6 diary entries, and in the very first one, he mentions doing some field work, a survey out on Cinnabar. Cinnabar at this point in time is probably not an island where people live, but rather a place where a volcano has erupted. Could this have marked the first in a series of events that have been plaguing the Pokemon world throughout all of the games that we've played? Maybe. Either way, the professors of the Pokemon world are predicting that things are only going to get worse, and that Pokemon and people are going to suffer, and that actually if things keep up as they are, with weather anomalies getting worse and worse, that people won't be able to meet the demands of energy and food. Resources will become scarce, and there needs to be a plan. That's when the professors are invited to a conference where they learn about a plan that was constructed without them by another group. A group that announced that humanity are going to be evacuated into space. We learn from the hacker's notes that this was a very need-to-know operation. When it came to, of course, Pokemon, only a few kinds of Pokemon were able to go with them, and that makes sense. And so a second plan was announced, the Pokemon Conservation Project. This was headed by the hacker who had hacked into the PC system of this mysterious organization, this group from another region. And if by another region, we mean not the region where the note was found, that being the Kanto region, that eliminates one of, well, I guess 10 options that we have. Still, as I mentioned earlier, you probably have a good idea as to who you think this organization is. This organization that goes by the name, the Foundation. And what you're thinking makes even more sense when you line it up with the notes from the hacker and the Pokélife app developer. The Pokélife app is what starts the game off. It was designed as a way for people to create habitats for Pokemon and people to live together. The hacker put a system in place into the PC, into the Pokemon Conservation Project, to make it so that if humans didn't return to the planet, which was the intention, for there to be surveys that would return to the planet and just check the habitability, that if that didn't happen, that the systems of the PC and the Pokélife app map would check the surrounding area, and if the habitat is improved, well then Pokemon can start being released from the system. Ditto is released first, because it is the most adaptable Pokemon, adaptable to any environment, and you as the player Ditto manage to make the environment change so that more Pokemon can be released. You repopulate the planet, you save the world. But Fuchsia City, when you show up, it's barren, it's dry. In fact, it seems to be experiencing somewhat of a drought. Your first portion of the game is about trying to bring rainfall back to the area, and when you find Mewtwo later in the game, it says that the last time it saw humans was back in Fuchsia after the rain stopped falling. So clearly, the world has been experiencing droughts, as well as a number of other weather anomalies, choppy oceans, for example. But the hacker and the PokeLife app developer, well, they pin this to meteorological events. So events of the weather, but that word meteor might have a little bit of a double meaning here, if you see where I'm going with it. Anyway, back to the Foundation. The Foundation finds the hacker and invites them to join their organization to help with this Pokemon conservation project. The hacker actually found them first. He was hacking their systems. They were hiding and suppressing information about these weather anomalies. The hacker used to take money and donate it to organizations like this that cared about Pokemon conservation. And with this money, with these donations, it seems that this organization was responsible for not only heading up the conservation project and helping the PokeLife app developer in developing their systems, but also in helping with the escape of humans into space. So it's time we talk about the Aether Foundation. The Aether Foundation are the Pokemon conservation body and the evil team of the Alola region, only evil in that time as a result of Luzamine, who becomes pretty obsessed with Ultra Beasts, beings from other worlds, some much like ours, and wants to kind of bring them into the here and now. After the story of Pokemon Sun and Moon, Luzamine and her daughter Lily head off to the Kanto region, interestingly enough, and we learn from the sort of vice president of the Aether Foundation, or rather I should say the Aether branch of the Alola region, a character called Wick, that yeah, Aether has branches all over the place, and that Alola is but one section of the company. Wick is very helpful and friendly to the player character, much like the Foundation members that find the hacker, who is initially very taken aback by their presence, but they need this person's help, much as Wick needs yours, or rather requests yours in concert with the International Police, the organization hunting down Ultra Beasts in the post-game of Pokemon Sun and Moon, and an organization mentioned once again here in Pokopia as dealing with the Team Rocket grunt. The Team Rocket organization had their own like separate plans for space travel, and I guess ultimately this was deemed like antithetical to the cause of what everyone else was collaborating on, so they were arrested. And it's funny because ultimately at the end of the game, it's Team Rocket who end up saving the human race, sending enough fuel back out into deep space. But this whole effort would have relied on so much coordination. It's a good thing that they had that hacker. And that hacker may have been Bill, who created the Pokemon PC system, who just is hacking in their own time. Bill doesn't really care for the money. We know this because Bill like gives you the SS Ann ticket, for example, in the Kanto games, because he's not fussed about any of that fancy smanchy stuff. Just likes his work and his rare Pokemon. Really cares about Pokemon, just like the hacker. But even if it's not Bill, it could be one of Bill's siblings or someone that follows in Bill's footsteps. After all, Fuchsia City is the home of Bill's family in the Kanto region, and he's got younger siblings there. And Wick mentions that Luzamine has specifically gone to Kanto to seek out Bill, who is possibly their investor, an investor in the Aether Foundation. Also, just look at the name, like Aether, just remove the A and the R. It's the Foundation, guys. This is not that deep. I want to have a look at some of these reports as left by the Foundation, or as they describe the organization, their organization, in the notes here, because I think they tell us a lot as well. Project cancellation. The project, originally set to launch next month, is moving ahead with its preparations despite its low chance of success. We took it upon ourselves to collect data and perform our own calculations. A report on the dangers that came to light from said calculations is included herein. With this in mind, we ask that you please seriously consider cancelling the project. Daily Porygon 2 notes. Companies involved in the space exploration industry are at each other's throats these days. I'm feeling the pain of it myself, as I've been put in charge of caring for some Porygon 2 meant for planetary exploration. It's a lot of work. Today, one of those 3 Porygon 2s seems unwell. I ordered a patch that sounded effective and applied it, so I hope it will feel better tomorrow. By the way, the dubious disc located with the Aether Foundation in the Alola region. New plan. Our organization is implementing a new plan in the hope of overcoming our past mistakes. See below for details. Past mistakes? Because the Aether Foundation was once an evil organization. You get it. This plan will require the cooperation of our entire organization, not just select departments. So we ask that all members read on and make this their top priority. All departments? Because the Aether Foundation has a ton of branches across the Pokemon world. Okay, I beat you around the head with it. Like, clearly the Aether Foundation is the organization. I don't know how you could theorize anything different. Though I'd love to hear it in the comments down below as to like who helped the Pokemon world. And it makes sense because the Aether Foundation have explored other worlds. They would be the right organization to help humanity get into the stars and hopefully get back. But it sounds like the plans were rushed, and as a result, humanity went out there without enough fuel. Why were they rushed? Well, as we've seen through all of these notes, the world was being destroyed by weather anomalies. Something was happening, something meteorological, and so what has Deoxys got to do with this? Well, the world was nearly destroyed once before. In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, in the Delta episode, the world is under threat by a great meteorite falling down to Earth. Some of the scientists at the time juggled with the idea of sending that meteorite to another Hoenn, another reality where they don't have to deal with the consequences. Zinnia scolds them, and you, the player, wearing a spacesuit that looks a lot like the ones that we see in the Pootopia Museum here in Pokopia, fight alongside it to destroy the meteorite and then fight off the alien force inside, Deoxys. Deoxys and Rayquaza are always having spats whenever a Deoxys shows up because Rayquaza protects the ozone layer. It helps keep balance. It wants to protect that layer in the earth, a layer that if the ozone layer disappeared, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine what ecological disasters that would cause. And so I have to wonder, is there a reality out there? Is there a telling of the Kanto story, which was released a week before the release of Pokopia, in which for the first time, the event exclusive Deoxys was made available to the public? Whether you think this follows Fire Red and Leaf Green or that Fire Red and Leaf Green or a different Kanto story, it doesn't matter. I think the implication is the same. Because let's say a Deoxys comes down to Earth or a meteorite crashes and Rayquaza is not able to stop it because it doesn't have access to Mega Evolution or perhaps doesn't have a good trainer by its side. Well, that would be a problem. And if Rayquaza is knocked off the board at the wrong time, when perhaps a Team Aqua and Magma are showing up, and by the way, the Birth Island event can also be accessed from Pokemon Emerald as well, so it ties this together very, very nicely, well, who would be there to stop Groudon and Kyogre from destroying the world with their intense weather anomalies? It's very odd to me that only Kyogre shows up and not Groudon. It's very odd to me that when Fuchsia City was last around, it was experiencing serious droughts. The picture here is clear. The meteor in the meteorological comes down in the form of Deoxys in the Sevi Islands south of Kanto. And then for whatever reason in this world, that Deoxys was not stopped. It was able to beat the Rayquaza, and with Rayquaza out of action, the weather trio becomes the weather duo. And now in Pokopia, there's only a weather solo that solos the whole Pokemon world. And the reason for the drought, yeah, maybe Kyogre is asleep at the end of its fight, or maybe Kyogre was the one kind of that lost, and ultimately it's Groudon that won, and then Groudon just sort of disappears and does its thing after causing many volcanic eruptions, shifting the earth, even causing parts of Celadon and Saffron City to like rise into the sky as a result of the land underneath it shifting so aggressively they become effectively mountaintops. The whole Kanto region and even the whole Pokemon world has shifted and changed forever. And very few remember the time from before. Professor Tangrowth remembers a little bit, which is why he talks a lot about his professor, his trainer, and I made a whole video about exactly which professor that was, because I don't think it was Professor Oak. Also, a huge thank you to Blizzard Entertainment for sponsoring this video and making it possible. Don't forget to click that link at the top of the description. Get a hold of your free trial cards while you still can, and jump on back into Hearthstone. Now is the best time with the Cataclysm.